It's too small. It's going live right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you got a countdown?
Should be live already.
I see it. Oh, okay, it's recording there? Okay. So, can you hear it there? Let's see. I think I'm going to have to refresh this one. Refresh.
Everybody, we're going to be just a few more seconds.
I've got a song to sing. Might not be on key, but it's from my heart. No one else can tell what the Lord has done for me. This might take all day, so I better start right now. But it might get loud.
Okay. We're live already. You got like 700 people on. I'm talking about.
You let me hanging, bro.
I know. We're here. We're live.
All right, so am I on there?
Yes.
Okay, on this one it doesn't show.
It's okay. You're live.
Oh, let me go. Am I on there? Okay. Oh, yeah, here we go. It's gonna be application now. Hey guys, how y'all doing? How's everybody? All right. So, if y'all have any questions, make sure that if you have any questions, we have a moderator. My wife's a moderator there. So if you have any questions, just let us know, okay? So just any questions that you may have. You know, it's a little different podcast today. Today, it's a testimony from Anthony. Not too long ago, I got to meet Anthony Favella, but even though he hasn't gone to prison, when we talked a little bit, I noticed that there was a similarity. There's a similarity is going to prison and being in the military. You know, on the podcasts, I always talk about PTSD, coming home. You know, one of the reasons why we do this podcast is that I like not only for the loved ones that are coming home or they're here or they're out already, not only for them, but also for the loved ones that are waiting for the inmates to come out or your loved ones to come out. You know, what's important is that this podcast is not only for them, but it's also for the loved ones that are home. You know, a lot of times when we go to prison, you have a loved one that's in prison, right? They have a loved one that's in prison. And what happens is sometimes the loved one was 19 years old, 18 years old. He gets a 10 years, he gets 10 year, 15-year bid. And in their mind, they're expecting a young man to come home just the way they left, real naive, quiet, you know. And when they come back after 15 years, they're not that person that they thought that they came home. You know, they're very violent, sometimes with mental issues, sometimes PTSD, and all these other things. I used to have, OCD, where I had to have everything like my salts and my napkin and my fork in one side, and I had to have everything lined up. It was the craziest thing. But those are things that I picked up in prison, along with PTSD. You know, you're in prison and you pick that up. You don't even know you pick it up until you come home and you go, oh man, I got these issues, you know. And a lot of times when you have a loved one in prison, you don't know what's wrong with them. You just think, hey, you know, this guy has anger issues. This guy's so mad, and this guy, you can't talk to him because he flies off the handle. Or a lot of times they don't want to come out of the room. You know, and I've noticed that military, when they come home from from Iraq or Iran, they come home the same way with PTSD, where they don't want to interact. I remember coming home from prison, I didn't want to interact with anybody. You know, I didn't. You know, my wife would go to Walmart. Let's go to Walmart. But I would try to go to Walmart, but I was still so nervous going to Walmart with all the people. I couldn't handle the noise and the traffic. You know, so like I said, this podcast is a little different, and I want to introduce Anthony Favella. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
So, like I said, it's a little different, but his PTSD came from being in the military, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to go over that, and then you just tell us what it's like and the issues that you saw, the men and women, they go through the same thing, you know?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, so that way they get a little view of who you were before you went to the military, before you gave your life to God. Okay, so what was your background growing up? What was it like?
Well, for me, you know, typical Southside Hispanic community. You know,
You're from here, from the south side? What part? What part?
I over by McCullum. I went to
You
McCullum
went to McClellan. Okay.
many years ago.
Maybe. For both of us.
Right?
Yeah. So your background now, was your father military?
No, but he acted pretty much military.
Right,
He
yeah.
used to work at the juvenile detention center, and
Oh, so you had a correction officer.
he was he came home and frustrated with all the teenagers acting up that were locked up and whatnot. I remember a time when he called up my wife, his wife, my mom,
Mhm.
and says, "Honey, I forgot my lunch." So okay, let's go take. You know, this was the old downtown on Durango Street back before it was
Oh, yeah,
Durango,
that
right?
was-
Way
yeah,
back in the
Yeah, way
day.
back in the day.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And uh, she made his lunch, brown bag, of course, and I go
Mhm.
knock it. You know, so she won't have to park. I go with her, and I go ring the doorbell, and you know, they unlock it, and it says, she goes, "I'll take him home after work." I'm like, what? You guys 13, 14 years old maybe, and they didn't process me. And what happened that day is,
So wait. So your dad worked at the correction center.
juvenile.
So they brought you in. He wanted to teach you a lesson what it was like.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
This is
exactly.
cool. This is cool. So his dad worked at the detention center and wanted to teach him a lesson what it's like to be processed, right?
Exactly.
So he processed you like just any other
Like
inmate.
another teenager getting in trouble.
Get in trouble.
Yep.
All right.
Processed.
So, all right. Okay.
Got issued mattress and whatnot, pillow, and set it down. And there's a roommate, and we went upstairs, and I forget the lineup. We had lunch at one point. We went upstairs and played basketball with I don't know,
Yeah,
20-foot,
Machine
20-foot walls, chain link
with gates
with gate
yes,
and everything, so the ball wouldn't go over into the
or
downtown
you
area.
wouldn't get out. One of the two.
Yep, scared the out of me for sure.
So
Okay.
the process was to teach you a lesson. How long did they leave you there?
Oh, it wasn't overnight. It was just his work schedule, whatever it was, 8-10 hours. But at the end, years later, I
So
found
did he
out
leave you there as a babysitting, or did he leave you there to teach you a
like
lesson?
an inmate. Yeah,
Like an
we went
inmate.
through the whole process of you know there was a guard that was marching us to and from lunch, to and from.
Did your dad
upstairs.
say anything?
Nope. He just told my mom, "I'll take him home when I get done," and impress.
Yeah.
Years later, we found out that all the sons of the correction officers, all the
It was-
civilians, we were the only ones being. It was separate. They
So
had the inmates.
How old were you?
12, 13,
So it was
14
almost
years
like a rite of passage,
old. Exactly.
right, to become a man. So they printed you. They thumbprint you. and
That's the
everything?
only thing I don't remember if they did that. I don't.
Wow, that is cool, man.
No, it wasn't cool.
No, but think about it. You know, if you're a correction officer, you want your son to go through that. I remember the first time I went to jail, I told my dad, he goes, no. You got yourself in there, you were fighting, you got in trouble. All right, come on, that's just like, so my dad was old school,
Yeah.
So once you go into jail, he wasn't going to get you out.
Well,
You know what? I don't think, hey, Mike, Sam, did dad ever get us out of jail? I mean, I must have been in jail when I was a kid. I think I was in jail for like 28 times that I can
What?
count. Oh yeah. I always get in trouble and fights and all that. So I mean, it was always go in for 2-3 days, got in a fight, come out, go in, get in another fight, get out, just kind of violent growing up. Right? But that is cool what your dad did. Now let me ask you this: did it have what kind of did it have a positive effect or negative effect? What was it?
I guess it had a positive effect because I really did not get into trouble as a youngster. I saw.
Did your dad ever tell you stories of kids that were coming in?
When he would come home, and I think it was now that I look back, I think it was really an act. He would come home frustrated and grab drugs out of his pockets, and he'd be unloading and go, "These kids, this and that," and tell me stories like, "I saw another kid die in the streets." It scared me. It scared me.
How old were you?
Again, I was a teenager.
Okay.
I was maybe 8th grade, maybe a freshman in high school. And
I wish I could scare Enzo. My son, you see that?
he's probably listening though. He goes, "I already got the heads up."
Yeah, and no, that's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so it scared you?
It scared me. Yeah, it sure kept me away from doing the
But,
drugs.
but you know what, Favella, is that, I mean, he's seen it all. Think about it. He's seen it all. He's seen the kids come in, get in trouble, they get processed, they come back, they get processed again, then they become adults, and guess what happens? They're in the system now. Now they're in the system, and it's easy to process them because they're in the system. They didn't get in trouble since they were kids. You know what's crazy is that you were blessed and I was blessed. Even though all these things that I got in trouble, my father he was a good man. My father was a minister. He was a pastor, and I mean, they say the pastor's kids are always the worst. I don't know if that's true or not, but we were fortunate that we had our fathers there to keep us in a tight leash. Imagine if they didn't keep me in a tight leash, or my brothers, and if we would have been dead. We would have been in prison. We would have been really strung out on drugs. Even though my father was a pastor, I was still out there doing my thing. But we were fortunate that we had a dad that was strict with us and still tried to instill. I mean, was your father saved? Was he a Christian?
No, I don't ever remember him going to church. I remember
your mom going to church.
My mom.
Wow.
My
Okay,
mom
so you still had that seed planted in you.
I guarantee you, I'm here because of the praying women.
Okay. So that seed was planted there by your mom, right?
I was an altar boy.
Ooh,
Catholic church.
An altar boy.
But that didn't mean just because I did that.
You ever drink the wine? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You drink the wine in the back. That's what I talked to some of the altar boys. Yeah, we used to drink the wine from the back. No, just kidding. That's off the record.
That wasn't
That's off the record. But the crazy thing is that it's like my son now, Enzo. I drop him off in the morning. At first it was like waking him really early to drop him off, but now I kind of like dropping him off. And I always tell my son, "Hey, don't forget who you are, bro." I know, Dad. I know. You're a leader, man. You're a leader, and you should be an example. You should defend and protect the smaller kids in you because he's big. He's almost 6 foot, and he's big, right? I said you should protect those kids, the little ones. They're getting bullied on. You should go in there and take care of them. You're a leader, bro. Don't forget you're a leader.
But we can say this about our own community, about Latinos.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of that talk. Men don't talk like that to their sons, or you got straight A's. Te ves muy.
Yeah, you think you're bad because you got a straight A.
Gotta be leaders.
But being raised in the ministry, I remember my dad would tell me, hit the leader que right? Hit the leader. Here he was a pastor, but he would always tell me, don't forget who you are.
I think that's what I lacked when I was young.
You didn't have that?
Not from my dad.
Yeah, no, and I instill that in my kids. Enzo and my older kids. I said, hey, man, don't forget who you are. We're Christians, and we are praying for you, and you come from a Christian home. Don't forget who you are. So like Enzo's my baby, so he's 13. But he's a big baby Huey. He's a big baby. So right now I have to instill that. You're a leader. You're special. You're gonna go places. You're gonna go places, bro. I tell them you're gonna go places, Enzo. But you got to keep your head straight. And remember, you're a leader. You're there to protect the kids that are being bullied, the smaller kids. You're there. You're not there to bully them. You're there to protect them and look out for them. And yeah, that's what he does. That's what he does. So
He's got a head start.
yeah, he has a head start. And the good thing is that your father was strict with you, so you were able to stay off of drugs and stuff. What was it like growing up in the neighborhood?
It was just,
Did you do any drugs? Did you like hardcore drugs?
No.
No?
I stay away from all of that. He scripted living out of me.
Yeah.
I did the weed, and that's all.
So no, so your dad was. Your parents didn't divorce or anything, so you always had a father figure. There.
I always had a father figure. He wasn't always there. He ended up being pretty sick.
Right.
I guess he had some kind of a PTSD looking back into his past as
Now,
a kid.
was he in the military at one time?
No.
Your dad? No, not at all. Okay.
I joined the military because I had, my mom would say, okay, you're home from school, you have homework, sit down at the table, you're not going outside, no street football, no nothing, no next door neighbors, finish your homework.
So you grew up real strict.
With
Mom and dad was.
Mom was my educator.
Okay.
My dad was the
corrector.
discipliner.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
And I was actually AB on a roll. And
so at what time did you go crazy? Because
later on, when I was in high school, my mom already said, "Well, you already know what to do. It's up to you now." And I was like, "Mom, you're telling me," And I joined DECA because I couldn't stand being in school for what it was, 8 hours.
Yeah.
So I got DECA. Went to
half and half, right?
Half and half.
DECA back then. I remember. Yeah. I don't know if y'all remember DECA. It was a half.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I always had my money.
Yeah, you were 11:30. You were on your way home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I had to go to lunch.
Yeah.
And so I did the half-day program. I went and talked to my mom and said, "Look, I can't even stand being in school for half a day, and it's free. And I got two options: get a job, go to college." I said, "Then now I have to pay for school and sit down." Back then, there wasn't no online courses and this and that. You're talking old school, right? In the 80s. So I was like, "No, I want to join the military." I was 13 years old. I knew I was going to join the military.
So you already knew you were going to the military.
I was in high school ROTC. It was kind of instilled. I think it was self-instilled, self-inflicted. Mm-hmm. I go riding on my bicycle to one of the recruiters and, say I go first to Army. So, what's your parents' name? Miss Favella. Your son's 13 years old. You can't have him here. We're going to get in trouble. Run me off. Next weekend, I go see the Navy recruiter. Same thing. Run off. Okay, what is it going to take?
Mentally, you already knew you were going to the military.
Yeah.
You were going to, what if it was Air Force?
Well, I had two choices: either follow the line that all I saw in the South Side. Juvenile, drugs, jail,
prison.
I didn't have that good of a trade skill, so I couldn't become a mechanic. I wasn't that great, So there was the military was my scapegoat.
Yeah, military pretty much kept you straight and then saved your life. I mean, you know what I mean? Because you took you took that path.
I decided to
you took that path where to do better for yourself. Nowadays the kids, they don't see it. I mean, you offer military to them and it's like, nope, I'm not going.
But earlier you mentioned, you have to have your spoon and your fork. Everything had to be a certain format for you.
Right.
You learn that. You learned that in prison, and you came out and like, what's wrong with this guy? Look, yes, everything's just right dress. Well, we talked about that earlier. Where's that come from? In the military, you don't have your personal apartment, your personal space. Yeah. I joined the Navy, so there was 3 bunks high, and there was 3 here and 3 there, small room like this room here. There'd be 80 men in here, easy. So what's personal space that we have? So everything is just right. Yeah. So when I got home,
PTSD.
it was the same thing.
Same thing.
Everything had to be
Now, what
in
kind
order.
of PTSD? So you had OCD too, right?
Yes.
You had, mine was, well, I'm just breaking it already. I've been out a year, but I'm just to the point where I'm breaking that OCD where I tend to reach over and put my salt and then I catch myself,
Right.
and then I just kind of push it, and but it's a fight that I want to move it, and I don't, and then I get over it, right?
It's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there.
It's like, so you had that PTSD. What was it like to have PTSD? Was it seclude you, or were you introverted?
When I first came out, like fireworks, 4th of July, and New
That
Year's,
freaked you out. Yeah,
indoors,
yeah, I heard
hugging my
about
dogs, and I'll tell you what, if it was the word of God, and I was bathing first. It was the word of God. It was my service dog. Now I have 3, and it was my motorcycle. That calmed me, that broke the ice with the PTSD and stuff.
Now, on the PTSD. Now, we're talking about getting PTSD, being in prison or coming home from prison having PTSD. The reason why I wanted to have Anthony on was because he had PTSD really bad, but he was in the military. Now, I want you to look at this. There's no difference on PTSD as being in prison and being in the military. It's the same thing. You're coming home, you have the same issues. You're afraid of talking to people. You're afraid of crowds. Man, I couldn't do crowds. I don't know if you could do crowds, but I couldn't do crowds. I like being at home in a quiet place. I didn't like noise. But those are things that God heals you from. Those are things that little by little. I know that when I came home, I had anger issues. I don't know if you had any anger issues.
Oh,
A lot, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's from part of the PTSD, and a lot of the anger issues and I think one of the things that I had with my anger issue was I didn't blame God. I didn't blame anybody for having PTSD, but I think it was more myself because I made those choices. Even though my case was an old case, 5 years later they came and picked me up. It was an old case. I was already serving God. I was serving the Lord when they picked me up. But I think I was more upset with myself and coming out. Um, when I was in prison, I lost my father in prison. So being in prison, you can't just cry. You can't just mourn for somebody or just sit in your bed and start crying. It's just difference. Prison's a different type of environment. You can't just really, you know what I mean?
You don't want to show that.
No, you don't show that weakness. The only time I remember crying. I did remember breaking down, but it was in the shower. I'm taking a shower, and I already had got the news that afternoon that I got to talk to him right before he passed away. Told him I loved him. I was proud of him. I was proud of being his son and everything he's done for us, the sacrifices that he did as a pastor, as a father, and everything that he had laid down. All the sacrifices that God told me, man, I'm so proud of you. And I'm just so happy. I told him I had this pride that I'm your son. Everything that you did for us. And I remember being able to let go, but I remember that afternoon, I knew he was going to be gone, in the morning or that afternoon. I called back and my wife said, hey. Yeah. So I remember being in the shower and then really kind of letting it, just crying and getting over it. But like I said, those are things that when you're in prison, you hold those things in and you can't really share with other people. Your circle in prison is so small. It could be 3 or 4 guys that you really trust, that you eat lunch with. They got your back. Take a shower. You're in the restroom. They got your back. And so it's just a few guys that you have a good relationship with. They understand you, and they have you have respect for them. They have respect for you. So my PTSD when I got home was more my anger issues. And the crazy thing is, I already had anger issues when I left. And then you go to prison, it just
multiplies.
Yeah, it amplifies. So, yeah. So how did you deal with your PTSD coming home?
Well, again, I gave my life when I was my life to Christ when I was in combat.
Mm.
You know what? You know how you hear sometimes it takes the lowest of the lowest of points
Right.
when you're just in the pits. There's nowhere further down you can go. The God to raise you up.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. I was in combat zone. I really wanted to die.
You wanted to die?
I wanted to die.
Okay.
I was just in that disbelief where I what I didn't want to share this testimony. I didn't want to come home and wow, look, that soldier, what shame. No, it's like you said, you didn't want to feel vulnerable in prison and grief and your dad passed away. I got back up. Red Cross called me, notified me that my dad had passed away. This was in 2006, if I recall. In, August of 2006, I was in Iraq. I was just like, my supervisor comes to me, and I looked in her eyes, and I was just like,
Is she a chaplain? Your chaplain?
and I just looked, and I was like, I didn't know what to say. And keep in mind that I hadn't spoken to my dad in 2 years. But when you know, you know. I just looked down and said, just say it. Just say it. I'll be all right. I've got your money. I don't want to show him vulnerability. And that passed away. Red Cross is getting ready to send me home. I'm like, what about I want to go home? She said, you want to go home? I don't want to go home. My mentality was I was already in combat, and I didn't want to go home and have to go back into combat.
Mm.
It's too hard.
Yeah, you already had adjusted to.
I'm already there.
Right.
Let me finish my tour. And then I thought about it as the night went through. Of course, I didn't sleep that night. My flight was supposed to be somewhere early in the morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, you know what? I need to die from my mom, from my siblings. I'm the oldest. They're looking for me for support. And of course, it takes something like 16, 18 hours, and then you layovers, it can take 25 hours.
So you had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah. When I got to stateside, zombie. I was a zombie. My dad's casket was open and viewing. And
So were you like an unbelief, or you just in a different zone?
you're just in a different zone. You just flown and traveled for 20 plus
you
hours.
got jet lag too.
You got that jet lag. It's just combined. And they're just thinking, I'm only here for 14 days and I go right back.
Back into combat.
Back into combat. And it's not if you're going to get ambushed, it's when.
It's when.
It's not a win.
And I think that's the biggest part of getting PTSD is that when you're in that combat, you're always expecting. The crazy thing is you're always expecting something to happen that may not even happen, but you're always on the guard, on the lookout, and that's like really. I've seen that in prison where some guys can't handle it. Guys hurt themselves. My nephew was also in I think he was in Iraq. Where was it, my nephew? I don't want to say his name. Iraq. When he came home, he also had PTSD. But the craziest thing is that our men and women that go serve time, PTSD is so hard on them that they tend to hurt themselves. They commit suicide. My nephew went to a funeral a couple of days ago. A friend of his, couldn't handle the PTSD. And the crazy thing is that when you guys go out there to combat, you guys come home and a lot of it looks like you guys are okay.
Yeah, because there's not
I mean,
in some cases,
yeah,
there's not a broken leg or limb or a missing limb or missing arm. It's all here.
Yeah, and
it's the imprisonment of this, and it's not visible. So you think I'm okay, and I don't see nothing physically wrong with you,
Man,
but you're still trying to break that process.
You know what I've seen is that, I was reading something the other day, about a month ago. 68% now men are the ones that commit suicide. 68%. The thing is that society has told us we're the man, we're the macho, don't be weak, don't show weakness. A lot of times you want to show that to your son, and you know what I mean. You're trying to keep him strong, and that's something that was something that was instilled in me when I was a kid. That I was macho, I was the man, y que primero, y que nomás los chicharrones tuyos truenan. You know what I mean? That we were the man of the house, and
that's our Latino background.
That's our Latino background. How we were taught to be men, and so growing up, you're the man. No one's going to tell you what to do. You're going to do it your way, and no matter what anybody says, you put it in metal. And the thing is that I see that. So when we start going through, I'm talking about myself too. I've been there. We start going through these things. We don't have anybody that we can reach out because we're afraid that they're going to see through us, that we're weak, and that we can't handle it. And I couldn't go to my wife when I was going through these issues of PTSD and all these issues I had mentally, and my own family saying that I had mental issues. Well, what happened was I started questioning myself. Do I really have mental issues? It was like, wow, he has mental issues, man. You can't even talk to him because he'll ignore you. He won't talk to you. He'll just blow you off or get mad. I got to a point where, man, do I really have? I started questioning myself. Do I got mental issues? And I started looking and looking. And the thing is that, when us as men, when we're hurt and we want to reach out, we can't reach out because I didn't want my wife to know I was weak. I didn't want my wife to know that I couldn't get it together. I didn't want my wife to know that I was so emotional from being in prison, doing 5 years, being in prison for over 5 years and trying to come home and make it. You get home and then it's a new thing. And now you're just like, man, what do I do now? Where do I go from now? How do I get a job? How do I continue? My kids were small now. They're big.
Taller than you.
Yeah, and then how do you come back and function and you go into prison? Same thing when you guys are coming home from Iraq and from the combat zone. How do you come in and just gel? How to make it work? It's so hard. For me, it was like I wanted to talk to my wife. I wanted to tell her, hey man, I'm suffering. I don't know if I got mental illness. I don't know if I have anxiety. I had so many emotions that I couldn't separate mental illness from PTSD, from anxiety. I couldn't, you know what I mean? I couldn't pinpoint it because we have so many issues when we come home, and that you don't know. And a lot of times, guys that are coming from the military, coming home, their loved ones, they don't give them that support. And that same thing when you're in prison, you come home, if you don't have a good support group, you're going to end up going back. You're going to mess up. And I've seen it all the time. I've seen the guys that come out of prison, man, they go back and, oh man, my family didn't support me. Nobody was there for me, and I needed help, and nobody helped me. I needed a ride to take my drug test. I got to take my urine test. I got to go this and work and probation and parole, and they give up. It's a lot for them. And coming out of prison, it's crazy, So, and I can imagine you guys coming. You're in war. You're in combat. Your life is on the line. You have your life on the line. Then you come home. Do you have that kind of respect? Do you have that kind of support? You just went and fought for our country, right? So, what are you looking for when you come home? Are you looking like
it's pretty much the same thing you're looking for? But look, they're like, oh, this guy's tough. He just came out of prison. He can handle his business. This guy's tough. He just came back from combat. He's a soldier. He's a sailor. Whatever the case may be, he can handle his business. And then we're too prideful to really ask for help. You said you wanted to speak to your wife, but you didn't know how. Yeah? So she's in the background thinking, my husband's good. And they're in the background thinking, my soldier's good. And here we are, trying to figure out how to maneuver San Antonio on our own.
how do we, the thing is, the question is how, as men, as Latinos, how can we lay down, how can we put it down to our family and say, hey,
You know, the Word of God says that real men love Jesus, right? Okay. And with that real is that we can reach out, we can cry out to God. And if we can accomplish that, we can reach out to our spouse. We can reach out to mom and dad. We can reach out to a support group. We can reach out.
we're the fortunate ones. I mean, I was raised in Israel, I was raised in good homes and coming out of prison. How, I mean, how do you just put it down and say, hey, man, I need help. I need, something's going on with me.
You and I,
Yeah.
and other men like us, we have to be that chain breaker. We have to teach the next generation, your son and daughter, my children, my grandchildren, because our parents didn't know how to do it. They didn't know stuff about PTSD back in the day. There's a General Patton got disciplined because he looked at the soldier and said, "There's nothing wrong with you. Get out in the front. Keep fighting, soldier." Okay. There was no such thing, or they didn't know the deal about PTSD. We don't know. We don't know that we
Well,
have to make that difference.
I grew up with it. I grew up with my father. My father was in the military. He went to war. He saw all kinds of stuff. So we thought that he was just violent because he was a bad dude. And we thought he was violent because of the past, the MA life, the drug life, the gangster life. We thought he was tough. I mean, he was just like that. Now we find out that as he got older, they diagnosed him with schizophrenic. He had where he couldn't sleep and he couldn't. He had bipolar disorder. He had, he had all these PTSD. He had all these issues, and we didn't know. We just grew up and thinking, man, that's tough, and he's mean, and what I mean. We grew up that way, thinking that it was okay. We thought that was a lifestyle, but here we find out as we got older, he gets older, they diagnose him with all these things from being in, and it was like, wow, dude. I mean,
and he was already
say
an older man when he got diagnosed with all of that, or
yes,
right out of the military?
No. It would have been nice to be diagnosed. He didn't get diagnosed until he was like maybe in the 50, 55. Then we realized that, I was still young back then, and I had already had my life. I already had moved on, but growing up, it was so strict with him that he could just flip on you like that. I mean, I'm talking about he'd go to zero and spank
They
you.
call that bipolar, right?
He was bipolar, but those issues were from the military, and we thought that he was just mean. But then we find out that he had these issues. So I can sympathize with that. I understand that because I've seen it. I grew up with it. But the problem is that for my father, I mean, God really made a change in him. Even though he went to prison, he was a heroin addict, into the military and all that. But it's like us is that we are taught not to show our weakness. And at what point? I mean, I don't know if anybody's listening to this, but if you're going through something like this, and you got PTSD, you got bipolar disorder, you got all these other things going on, and you just have this in your head, and you don't know which way to go, and you're just uncomfortable, and you don't know what's going on. At one point, you're going to have to put it down and say, "Hey, man, I need help. I need help. I got to reach out. I need help. I can't make it on my own. I need help right now." And that's a big thing, man. To be able for us to admit that we need help. It's the hardest thing for me. Was the hardest thing.
So in the military, and once I retired, the VA has support groups, for that, for PTSD and whatnot. Once they evaluate you and say, "Okay, you want a support group? Here, Music classes once a week or once every other week for an hour or 2 hours. Open discussion in a lot of cases to kind of, oh, I got what you got. Oh, I feel those symptoms. Oh, maybe I need to go to this other group,
A good support
a
group.
good support group. You know, and it was unfortunate that the gentleman that was, he was he was a soldier. He was my mentor. He retired 5, 6 years before I did. He's the one that helped me get into the
To the support
system,
group.
into the support group. I mean, he moved into Florida. He took his life.
He took his
He
life.
took his life. I don't know if you ever saw, probably November a year ago,
No, I didn't know.
where I was doing a lot of push-ups for
Oh, I
suicide
remember that.
awareness.
Yes, suicide awareness. So that
suicide
was a friend of
awareness.
yours?
So that was my battle. That was one of my battle buddies.
Seeing that, and then, you know, he was your support group, and
He was
that
my support
he
group.
was your support group, your guy to go to.
Yep.
And at the end, he ended up taking his life.
He would call me.
And he didn't call you.
He would call me. But I call him.
Oh, okay.
I call him. But
You know, in us, for us in prison, is the way we know that someone's going to hurt themselves. They're at that edge where, you know, their family, somebody in their family dies. I saw one that his son passed away, and he was so he was so broken. Um, he started giving his things away. Hey man, you know, he just started going out to his friends and started giving his things away. So I had never experienced that. I had never seen that. You know, over the years I got to see it now. So I was fresh in prison, just not, you know, I became friends with him, and he starts giving things away. Hey Sonny, I want you to have this book. This book's really good. Oh yeah, okay. Well, you know, he still had like 5 years to go, right? He had been there for 8 or 9 years. Still had time to go, right? He starts giving these things away. I didn't know what was going on because I had never seen that. Yeah,
but he saw all the gifts he was
he
giving
was
out.
giving everything away, and I was like, wow. He was right across the hall from me. So I was thinking, it never dawned on me. Why would he give things socks and shoes and pennies if he still got 7 or 8 years to do it? I just couldn't put it together. Right? Well, that following day, he took his life. He was so hurt about his son, his little 5-year-old, 6-year-old, something like that. His baby got killed in an accident, and the wife was still in a coma, and he just couldn't handle it. And so, in prison, after being there for a while, when I would see a guy that was something happened to him, I would keep an eye on that. I would I'm gonna keep an eye on him, see how he's doing, check up. Hey, you doing all right? When they would start giving things away, I already knew something was up. So a lot of guys won't commit suicide; just they start giving things away. Or they'll come up to you and say, "Hey, man, I want to thank you for your friendship. It meant a lot." When you say it meant a lot, it's he's going to do something. You know, hey, instead of him saying, "You know
That's a
what?
title talk.
Yeah, you know what, bro? Your friendship means a lot to me, man. I really appreciate you taking the time and encouraging me." But when they said, "Hey, you're you know what? Your friendship really meant a lot to me," you already know what's up. You know, but like I said, it's you don't have to be in prison to be in prison. I don't know if that makes sense. You don't have to physically be shackled. You can be in the free world and be in prison here. And I see a lot of that, and that's why a lot of times, and that's part of the enemy. The enemy, that's what his job is. His job is to get us all wrapped up. This is why a lot of our youth are chemically imbalanced. I think this is one of the reasons why growing up I was chemically imbalanced. I did drugs I might have had PTSD back then. I might have had anger issues. I had a lot of anger issues. That's a given. But I grew up chemically imbalanced. If I wasn't on coke, if I wasn't doing other drugs, and the last years of being an addiction, an addict I was a heroin addict, and that I found heroin to really calm me down. Even though I was a functioning heroin addict, still had a trucking company. I was in the oil field, but that I found that would keep me mellow, not aggressive. I wasn't the type to fight back or yell. I wasn't. My temperament had changed. But we're so where we need chemical, because chemically imbalanced, and then that's why, and this is why the enemy, when he comes in, I mean, our youth, man, check out our youth. The way they're just, man, dude, our youth is so bad right now. It's so banged up. Doing drugs. A lot of them are cutting themselves. I don't know if y'all about. I mean, this generation cuts themselves.
That's what happened for a while.
It's just like, wow. I just didn't see. My generation didn't do that. My generation went out across the street and got in a fight and just.
It's just a fist fight.
It was a
Nowadays,
fist
you
fight.
can't get in a fight.
Now you can't get in a fight because you get shot.
Yeah, you die.
You die. They'll run you over. They shoot you. They'll drive by.
And if they don't like the outcome, they'll come back the second time.
They'll come back the second time. It wasn't back then. After you got in a fight, you shake hands. Hey,
and
whatever.
Yeah.
You move on. It's not like that anymore. Now we have to educate our kids. Okay, I gotta be careful. This is why I tell my son and go, don't be a bully, bro. Don't be a bully. Know who you are and know your value. You're there to protect and help other kids that are smaller and less, But yeah, man, I've seen that, and I think if it wasn't for God really coming in and changing our lives, and us giving our life to God, and I mean, what would you think that you'd be right now if you hadn't given your life to Christ?
I wouldn't be here. I'd be 6 foot under. I gave my life to Christ, I think 3 or 4 years before I retired, so I didn't really have too much of a teaching at that point. When you're out in combat, you get a chaplain, you get a rabbi, you get a Protestant, you get a Baptist,
and a priest,
or whoever came, whoever was floating through the combat zone, we're going to have a service. It wasn't a Sunday service; it was whatever day, and if you were there, you were there. And if you wanted to hear the word, you'd go to whatever minister was available. And that's where I learned and opened my eyes to, because I was born and raised Catholic. So I saw, I don't know how many countries and how many states that I've traveled in, certain states I went primarily Baptist, certain states, certain places I went primarily Pentecostal. And so I've seen them all. So when I was out there, long story short, coming back stateside, I was saved for 3 or 4 years. And
so you met God in the military.
I met God in the military.
So what made a difference for the lifestyle coming back? What kept you continuing serving God?
I don't know if I was serving God because I was surviving combat. I just knew that there was something different for me. I came stateside 2009, and first church that I planted my feet was the Miracle Center. Pastor me there.
Man, couldn't get any better than that.
And I think I stayed there and served about 4.5, 5 years. Parking attendant, usher, and ultimately I was camera operations man. And
we need one here.
I didn't.
We need
We'll
one
talk.
here. Did you say that? What?
Camera ops.
We need to.
So I didn't worry about that big hat that lady had that was in front seat because it was my camera and I was focused on Pastor Me then. So his sermons were one-on-one. Every time I was behind that camera, I would follow him. He didn't move around too much, but it was a one-on-one sermon. There was nobody else in those seats, just me and him. So he had my undivided attention.
And you know what? God sent you to the right place. I mean, that place right there, man. Now his son's there. Eddie, right?
Eddie's a lead minister.
Wow. I know Eddie. Man, that came out of my dad's church. My dad sent him to Bible school.
And I've heard your dad minister when he was younger too.
Yep. And Eddie, I remember Eddie and his brother Ernie. They were little, maybe 5 or 6 years old. Even the little girls, I remember they were small. But God has done something in your life. And this is where we. When I started looking back at my life, I started looking at, because I started serving God. I knew God before. Before I went to prison, I knew God. I was in prison serving God, but not really serving God. I was still in a state of shock. You know what I mean? I'm in there and just kind of playing the part, and you know what I mean. I wasn't really serving God. I knew God. I'd get into the Word, and you know, I didn't want to go to church. I didn't go to the the chapel or anything. I just did church. I did God my way. You know, and I knew I had a relationship with Him, and I would read the Word, and it was in my time. You know, I didn't really. I really look. I don't think I really got to know God until I came home. I don't know if that makes any sense because I knew God growing up. My father being a minister, right, being a pastor, and knowing God and the Word and growing up in the Word. I give my life to Christ. An old case comes and picks me up. I go to prison. Never blame God. It was always me. You know, I really didn't have an experience. Some say that when you're in prison, you have this this enlightenment of Jesus, right? Because you're in prison. That was totally not true. To be honest with you, while I was in prison, I didn't even hear from God. You know, I would try to tell him, man, God, I need to know something. I got to hear from you. I got crickets, man. 5 years, nothing, nothing, nothing. I didn't hear from God. I didn't feel His presence. I knew He was there. You know, I knew through all the process He was there. I didn't end up hearing from God. It wasn't until I think it was in I think it was like in November when my father passed away. Right around December, November, December, I heard from God. It wasn't until my father passed away when I heard from God, and all I heard was, "Get ready." I was like, "What? Get ready? Am I coming? Am I going home?" I was like, I didn't think about what he was saying about get ready. It was like, "Am I coming home?" I just heard it. Get ready. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe I am coming home. You know? But it wasn't until I came home where I realized that, man, I can't do this by myself, man. I can't. The Christian walk wasn't what I left it when I left. You know, this was something that was more deeper, more profound, and I knew that there was more to God than what I had been taught as a boy. And as growing up and becoming a man, I knew that coming out of prison, there was more to God than the life I was living. And going through the PTSD, going through the PTSD, going through all these issues, anger management, bipolar things that I was going through, I had to reach out to him. I said, look, uh, I, I can't figure it out. You know, I told God, hey, I can't figure it out. I can't do it by myself. I can't figure it out. Yes, I know you, but I don't know you. You know what I'm saying? You know God, but you don't know God, but you've heard of God, but you don't know Him. You know what I'm talking about? And it felt like it was like I had heard of Him, but didn't know Him. I had been raised in the ministry, but never had that experience.
That's my experience on that.
Okay.
Verse 3.
Okay.
I knew about the Father, and I knew the Father.
Okay.
I knew about Jesus.
Okay.
And I felt it. What we lacked was the Holy Spirit. Because you said 5 years, you just testified 5 years. You did Jesus, you did God your way. You did church your way in your prison cell. Okay? But that macho, that Latino macho.
Well, we can't cry in prison, so
how we gonna and we can't cry in combat.
Yeah.
And we're in the same situation. We're in the same boat.
I'm more of a crybaby now. It's a crazy thing. I cry for everything now. I gotta catch myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, hold on, let me catch my breath here.
And
no, but
your daughter will get you every time. The girls will get you every time. That's right.
I couldn't even talk with
Amen.
I couldn't even tell them.
It was allowing. It's allowing the Holy Spirit. It's okay. It's okay to reach out. It's all right. It's okay.
I think you're correct. I just, it's like I knew there was more to God than what I had been taught and what I had heard as a little boy. I just knew, hey, there got to be more, man. There got to be more. and then all these issues I had. I mean, I had to reach out. If that makes any sense. I had to do something. I knew if I didn't do anything, I was either going to hurt somebody. The pressure. I was getting pressured. I was getting really, really pressured. I was getting tightened, and things were coming at me in my Christian walk. Where I was like, to a point where I just said, you know what, Tyler, I don't want to do that. Y'all do your thing. Y'all do church the way y'all want to. I'm just going to live my life. You know, I always look at it like, God, I don't want to walk with you. I want to serve you, but if it means that I'm just going to raise my children, if it means I'm going to serve you, raise my children the right way, and grow old with my wife and serve you, I'm going to do that. I was up to that point where I wanted to walk away from the ministry because I was just crazy, man. But that's when I realized, I reached out to God and I said, hey, I'm either going to hurt myself, I'm going to hurt somebody. This is not going to end well. I had to tell him, I got, sometimes you're going to have to come straight with God and tell him, hey, man, I'm having these issues, man. Whether if you're in prison, you're coming home, or you came home from prison, or you went overseas at the war or Iraq or that, you come home, there has to be a point in your life where you're just going to have to say, hey, you know what, God, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't want to check out. I love my kids and my wife, but
God is good.
so I see that with these men that come out of prison, they have no support group. This is why it's important for me to get this word out, right? To get this word out about this podcast, because I see these men come out and they're tore up. They got no support. They got nowhere to go, and then it's hard for them to reach because, like I said, they've been taught that they're the man, the macho, and they're the providers, and they're the man. Don't show that your weakness, and because you're all tatted up, and but really, 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 all these tattoos that I got on my body, they mean nothing. They mean nothing. But I do know that, God changes. God can change you, and give you a different life. God's given me a different life compared to the life that I lived before. So, you're going to have to get to a point where you reach out, So if you're there and you're saying, hey, man, I got nowhere to go. I don't know who to reach out to. We're here, man. We're here. All you got to do is Anthony Favella on Facebook, Anthony Favella. And I'm Jesse Sonny Perales. And then you got Prison Talk. You got our house ministries, our ministry. And look, we meet here on Thursdays. You're part of our group. So we meet here on Thursdays. And this group here, man, we've been blessed with our group. Oh my God, man. It's just amazing what to see.
I witnessed last week, got here, and there was a couple of guest visitors. A gentleman that was living in the streets, that was saved, but he backtracked, he backslid. He started doing his heroin, I believe it was again. I think he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, with a lot of issues, but he was here seeking help. Guys, I'm on Facebook a lot, and I post my phone number a lot on Facebook.
Yeah, I've seen
for
that.
my business.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But I guarantee you this: if anybody needs to talk, grab that number, give me a call. I'll listen. Yeah, I'll listen all day long. And if I miss your call, I'll call you back. Text me.
Yeah.
I'll reach out.
Put your number out there.
I'll reach out. There's a brother out there. He says, he told me this month. He says, bro, you're the only one. You call. He calls me.
And you answer.
And if I miss a call, I I don't skip missing his number. Once your name is on my contact list, once I had your name, your phone number, you call me, bro. Give me 20 minutes. I'll call you back.
Yeah.
You know, call. You reach out to me, and I put you on my contact. I'm gonna call you back.
We get together on Thursdays, so if you're looking at a place to connect, to hook up, let's just say that you're going through some issues. Man, I'm still strung out. I'm still slinging. I'm still on heroin. I'm on coke. I'm having all these issues, PTSD, anger management. I'm having schizophrenic. I'm bipolar. I'm having these issues. Hey, don't sweat it, because half of our group has gone through what you've gone through. And this is a unique group, man. It's a unique group. I've seen it go from, what, 2 of us?
Yeah.
I've seen it go from 2 to where we're at right now, 40 or 50, 60. Yeah, yeah, it's gone crazy. But you know what? I can see that God's hand is in it. You know, and I'm going to give you an example today. Today we went looking for signs. We had talked to 3 people. Check this out, 3 people. We're having our first service on Sunday, February the 5th, at this location. We're having our first service, right? Our first Sunday. That's crazy. It's exciting. Our first Sunday service,
Amen.
right, on February 5th. And we've been looking for signs. We've been looking for somebody to make signs. I think I shared it with you earlier. This is how crazy. This is when you know that God is just in the detail. He's in the plan. You know, so we went to go look at 3 people to make signs for us. Nope. And we're like, okay, well, the guy that I'll get back with you. Hopefully I can, if I can't have it this week, I'm like, hey, we've been looking for 3 weeks for signs for February. You ain't going to believe this, man. We're here getting ready for our podcast. Somebody walks through that door. Can I say his name? Yeah. His name is Jacinto. Jacinto, what's Jacinto's last name? Martinez, right? Martinez, and he has a graphic design. So I'm gonna give him a
shout out.
A shout out.
That's
I'm gonna
right.
plug him in. Jacinto, thank you very much. So he walks through the door and he goes, "Hey," he just opens the door. It's crazy, right?
He goes, "What do y'all need?
What's
Need signs?"
going on? I go, and then I didn't recognize he's way over there. And I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "Where's the signs?" I go, "You ain't gonna believe it, but we've been trying. I got you. I'll have them ready for you tomorrow. I'm gonna make them for you." Man, come on. I mean,
God is good.
we've been looking for signs, right? And then, if I can tell you, if I can only tell you what's got us here and what has taken place to get us here, and the things that have happened here to be here. So, you know, I'm so grateful to God. Everything He's done in my life and taking me from the life that I used to live before, ex-heroin addict, going to prison, coming home. Now I'm loving my wife and my kids and going with my kids and taking them to school and bringing them back. And it's just phenomenal. The life change. When God comes to your life and changes you, really, really changes, because you got to really want. You got to want that change. You got to want that want, and God will change it. There ain't nothing that God can't do, man. Let me tell you. So, any questions out there? Do y'all have any questions for us, or any questions for Mr. Favella? How are we looking out there?
That's good. No questions.
How are we doing with time? We're doing good?
Yeah, we're right at 1 hour.
Okay, so all right, we're gonna cut it.
Cut it short today.
Yeah. So listen, guys. So Favela, thank you for coming. You know, and it was different today, but when like I said, talking to Favela, him being in the military, coming home with all these issues, man, it's no different than being in prison. No different. If you're in the military, you're going through these. Look, man, if you've gone to the military, or if you've gone to war, you've gone to these places, and you have PTSD, and you're going through these issues, you got to reach out, man. You got to. I've seen so many people hurt themselves because they don't want to reach out. They're afraid that people will say, they're weak and they're not strong, and you know they can't show that they're weakness. But let me tell you, I'd rather show my weakness and to get it right, and then to keep going the way I was going. This is why I I had to give everything I had to God and say, hey, look, you need to change me. You need to do something here, man, because something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. I need you. But
It's not weakness, bro. Yours is not weakness. That is this brother right here. He says, he just said a couple of minutes ago, I'm home, I'm loving my wife, I'm loving my kids. Now, this brother right here, he's loving everybody. And once you meet this man, you don't know because it's genuine, bro. It's real. It's a real deal because
But you know what?
they know, bro.
That's
People know you can't fake that.
No, but it's something that God's given me because I guarantee you, this was not me. I wasn't a crybaby, but so like I said, so Thursday we meet here on Thursdays at 7:00. You want to put the address up there, Rick?
Yeah.
Ezekiel said to tell you hi.
Hey, bro. What's going on?
What's going on, Ezekiel? So we're gonna put the address up for Thursday at 7:00. I always tell the guys, if you're gonna come, bring your wife with you. I don't want we don't want to just have God work with you. God has to work with your wife. It has to work with the family. If the wife's coming, bring your husband. We want God to work with both of you guys. So if you're coming, bring the wife with you. Tell her you're gonna take her for a steak afterwards. You're gonna take her unas enchiladas or something. And today we're gonna go to eat dinner, but we're going to a Bible study first, and then we're gonna go eat. Yeah. So then, like I said, February 5th is our very first Sunday. So we invite you, come on out, support us. So anything else? Are we good?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Our first service is Sunday at 2:00. The information will be
That's
there.
right,
Again,
2
it's 2423 Palo Alto Road. And this Sunday we have a special event in the evening at 5 p.m. for pastors and ministers and worship leaders. So make sure that you go to our page, to Our House Ministries, or to Jesse Sunny or Sofia Perales, and follow us, link up with us so that you can stay up to date with everything that we have going on.
Also, yeah, so she did mention that on February 5th, we're having our first service, right?
Yes.
That same day at 5:00, Johnny Ramirez, the guy that's going to be doing our praise and worship, he's going to be holding a clinic. It's going to be for praise and worship pastors, a pastor, co-pastor, a worship leader. And what he does, he teaches a clinic on worship, music, and how it should flow. So anyway.
Also, if you have been previously incarcerated, if you're a loved one of someone that is incarcerated and you would like to be on Prison Talk, make sure that you send us a message so that we can get you on the schedule.
I would love to interview you guys. I think next week is Lita.
Yes, next week we have Lita and Alfonso.
Oh man, that's gonna be awesome. I love those two. Yeah, man, it's crazy. Everything that they do for the community, man. You got to meet these people. You got to be on the next podcast.
So I always say that we have a special. Everybody's special. I always say that. It's an awesome story. Every single time.
Yeah. These guys, they have the prison issue to go in and they preach the word of God. And it's just the craziest thing, man. And they're all over the place, always blessing people. They're always blessing us all the time. So, yeah. So we're going to put flyers out there for them next week too, right? Favella? Thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Good night.